Po Joe, Biden announces actions to combat anti-Asian attacks. Fund the Po Joe on Tuesday laid out plans to address rising racism against Asian Americans, increasing accessibility hate crime data, requiring new training for local police, and establishing nearly $50 million in grants to support survivors of domestic violence and sexual assault who face language barriers. Funding the Po Joe, Justice Department would also review the next month how it can better crack down on violent acts against people of Asian descent in the United States, including prioritizing prosecution for those who commit hate crimes. The steps by the federal government to combat racist violence came a day after a man was captured on surveillance in New York, stopping a 65-year-old Filipino woman while making anti-Asian remarks. Oh, he stomped on her while making anti-Asian remarks. Mr. Biden also traveled to Atlanta this month to express grief for victims of a mass shooting in which the gunman killed 8 people, 6 of whom were women were of Asian descent. Now I'm going to ask a question that they're not even saying about this massage parlor that got shot up. How? You know what? Let's leave that alone. Let me stick to the news. Quelling an increase in racist attacks, including violent attacks against Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders, has been one of the early challenges of the Biden presidency. In his first weeks in office, he condemned xenophobia against Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders and directed the Health and Humane Services of the Justice Department to develop ways to combat racist actions. The details released by the White House on Tuesday were the next step in carrying out plans to address the problem. The administration said in a statement that it would expand a White House initiative on Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders that it had previously worked to provide economic opportunities to the communities by mandating that the group also counter anti-Asian violence. So this group was already in existence to help give them economic opportunities. And they keep telling us to pull ourselves up by our bootstraps. But they have specific things in line already to give them economic opportunities. Mr. Biden will also appoint the White House official to review policies across the government affecting Asians, Hawaiians, and Pacific Islanders. As part of Mr. Biden's stimulus relief package, the Department of Health, did you hear that? As a part of Mr. Biden's stimulus relief package, the Department of Health and Human Services also established grants for survivors of domestic violence and sexual assault who may struggle to get help because of language barriers. So I'm going to ask you a question. If Asian women are in so much danger that they need a domestic violence and sexual assault help, grants, that means their own men are whooping their behinds. And now we have to pay for the Asian on Asian crime? This program will expand services to domestic violence survivors from Asian America, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander communities, the White House statement said. So they're getting their behinds whipped so bad that our government has to give them money. They get their behinds whipped by their own men. See, this is why they have feminism. This is why they need feminism. To protect themselves from their own men. The Justice Department will publish a new hate crimes page. So how do we jump from them needing money to help combat domestic violence to now hate crimes? So when they have Asian on Asian crime, are they charging each other with hate crimes? The Justice Department will publish a new hate crimes page with a focus on attacks against Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders, and the FBI will soon hold a civil rights training events to encourage reporting of hate crimes. Language barriers and concerns over questions over immigration status have made some victims reluctant to report crimes in the past. Attorney General Merrick B. Garland told the Justice Department employees on Tuesday that the rise of reported hate crimes required renewed energy and emphasis on investigation and prosecution, increased community outreach, and the improved collection of data critical to understanding the evolving nature of and the extent of crimes. As a part of the Justice Department's 30-day review, officials will consider how prosecutors can use civil penalties to address acts of bias that do not rise to the standard of hate crime. Hate crime charges can be difficult to prove in court. Tell me about it. It's even increasingly difficult when you have melanin. In some states, including New York, prosecutors need to show that victims were specifically targeted because of their race. Experts have said that establishing such a motive for attacks against Asians is even more challenging because there is no widely recognized symbol of anti-Asian hate such as a noose or swastika. So how come when we find nooses, the people who put the nooses in the place aren't charged with hate crimes? If all you need is a noose. Hate crimes persist and continue to have a toxic effect on our society. Blah, 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 blah. Done with that one. Next one. Because we was talking. I figured we might as well go to this article because we were talking about the domestic violence in the Asian community. Seattle men accused of luring and raping and terrorizing young girls. Kirkland police are asking for the public's help in locating 37-year-old Scott Barry Uchida, accused of violently sexually abusing teenage girls over several years. 2 men, including Uchida, are charged with abusing underage girls from 2015 to 2017 in multiple King Pierce County cities. In a statement from Kirkland Police, an investigation stated in 2018 when officers responded to a welfare check after a juvenile victim reported suffering from ongoing sexual abuse, psychological abuse, and threats from 2 male adults inside a Seattle apartment. According to King County court documents, the men lured underage girls into an apartment basement and provided them with drugs and alcohol. The men raped the teenagers and threatened them with physical violence. The men raped the teenagers. The men raped the teenagers. The men raped the teenagers and threatened them with physical violence and firearms. King County prosecutors say for 2 long years, 2 men preyed and terrorized on underage girls in the Seattle area. 37-year-old Barry Uchida and 34-year-old Thomas Edward Lee Anderson are both charged with multiple counts of child rape and promoting the commercial sexual abuse of a minor, detectives say. Let's talk about the victims. In January of 2018, a Kirkland police officer was called to one of the area schools after a student reported to a youth advocate that she was thinking of taking her own life. What she told the officer was heartbreaking and horrific. According to the probable cause statement, in the summer of 2015, the girl identified as HG met Uchida and Anderson on a social media site called meetme.com. Parents, on a social media website called meetme.com. When she was only 12 years old. She said the 2 men contacted her through the app and offered to pick her up so they could smoke marijuana and drink alcohol at 12 years old. HG told investigators they drove her to a basement studio apartment near 12th Avenue Northeast and Northeast 50th Street where they got high and drunk. She said that's when both Uchida and Anderson violently raped her for 3 days. I'm going to keep showing it. They violently raped her for 3 days, threatening violence if she left. HG reported Uchida put her phone in airplane mode, searched through her contacts for family members, and said he would kill her family if she did not recruit other girls to the apartment. She described being brought into the apartment's bathroom, shown a 55-gallon drums, and told that they used these barrels to dissolve bodies so they could make her disappear. The second victim. The first victim recruited a 14-year-old girl identified as SS to come to the apartment in August of 2015. According to court documents, that girl said she was beaten and raped by Uchida, and then raped again by both Uchida and Anderson. SS said they took naked photos of her for potential clients, and the same girl, and that same night they recruited 2 other men who paid to have sex with her and the other juveniles, and they raped both the girls. She told detectives Uchida offered them up for $1,000 each if the clients wanted to use the condom, and $2,000 for without a condom. and said she filed a police report with the Bellevue Police Department, which she was then forwarded to Seattle Police. The first victim identified the third girl she was forced to recruit into prostitution, who was just 15 years old. Identified as IH. Like the others, she said she was raped by the two men, threatened and forced into prostitution, and said the men even videotaped the assault. And IH secretly took photo of the male sitting in the apartment, telling detectives that she did so she could later identify them. Okay. Now, prosecutors described extreme fear and terror all three victims felt. Court documents state the victims were made to believe that they had become part of the defendant's street gang. Gang activity? Oh my. Gang activity. Street gang, and that the rapes, and therefore, the victims were made to believe that they had become part of the defendant's street gang because of the rapes, and therefore had become the gang's chattel. Like slavery. The defendants systematically instilled fear in each of these victims by using social media and the girls' phones to learn about their personal lives. They threatened to kill the victims' parents and siblings and burn down their homes. Now, let's go back to the initial charges. It said, Kirkland's police are asking for help in public for locating a 37-year-old Barry cheater accused of violently sexually abusing young teenage girls over years. And I want to point out that those charges are quite light, aren't they? Because this says the third victim said that the man videotaped the assault. Isn't that child pornography? Why aren't child pornography charges on here? Anyway, they think Mr. Uchida left the country and went where? Where you think Mr. Uchida went? Back to China? They can't find him. And you know, the victims are minors, so honestly, I don't know what race the victims are. That's why Biden is giving them $50 million to protect them from themselves, and then you want to try to put it on us? That we are causing. Look what's happening in your community. All this Asian on Asian crime.